Welcome to the College Football Free Preview Show, sponsored by Yoked. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and I'm joined by a gentleman who is yoked, Ryan Battery. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Thank you with that extremely nice compliment, which is not entirely true. But my Planet Fitness Black Card is trying to get me yoked, so we'll see where that goes.
Well, you need some yoked, my friend. That's what
Yeah.
you need right here. This is the key.
Okay.
We are brought to you by Yoked, which is one of the best protein products on the market. Safe and effective. It is made from egg yolk and only 47 calories per packet. It is a safe way to add protein to your workout routine. It's effective. It works, and it tastes like birthday cake. Visit yoke.com today for more information. There's plenty of great programs on there for teams, too. If you want to get your team on that yoke routine, there's special deals at yoke.com today. Again, visit yoke.com for more information, but I can't recommend it enough. It's a great product, tastes great, and it's a nice, quick, and easy way to add some protein to your workout routine. You can never have enough of that. Again, it's made from real eggs. All right, man. Another interesting weekend of college football in the Division I ranks in New England. We're going to start with Boston College, who played Louisville on Friday night and promptly blew a three-score lead in a 31-27 loss. I don't know what to make of this team anymore. You know, Kevin Stone and I talked about this the other night. I really just don't know what to make of them anymore. They're a shell of the team they were at the beginning of the year. All we kept hearing was how Bill O'Brien was building a monster, and they were ranked at one point. And then from that Missouri loss on, they beat Michigan State in primetime on Saturday night. But, Ryan, they have not been the same since. This football team, as I mentioned, is a shell of themselves. Can't run the football, can't stop the run. Thomas Castellanos, all of a sudden, it has reverted back to some of the play that we saw last year that got him into trouble. They have a bye this week, and I think it comes at a good time, even though it's their second bye in 3 weeks, which I don't understand why you would schedule that way. But it comes at a good time nonetheless, because when you look at their last 4 games, after the bye, they have Syracuse at home, and then they have SMU, they have North Carolina and Pitt. So they have a tough slate coming up. They need to figure this out and get this thing turned around, because it's not going to be easy. Those are 4 tough games. They need to win at least 2 of them to be bowl eligible. The way this team is playing right now, I'm not sure there's a winnable game left on their schedule.
Yeah, it's hard to find that win. I was actually at the game Friday, went last minute with a friend of mine who has season tickets, was really excited. You know, that stadium and the lights is a lot of fun, and it was an amazing start. But I'll tell you, when they missed that extra point, I kind of was like, I hope that doesn't come back to bite them, because it did, right? The rest of the game, because of that last drive, if you have that extra point, you're looking for 3 instead of 6.
Right, because they're chasing it now.
Right. They've had so many different kinds of losses now, right? They've had the comeback loss, like where they're getting blown out, almost turn it around, lose, right, against Virginia Tech. They have this one with a huge lead and blow it. It's definitely concerning. I'm trying to give some grace to Bill O'Brien, thinking, okay, this is year 1. It's not all his guys. As he starts to build the program, it's going to come along. But it's like, you have been in games, you're just losing them close. Is that personnel? Is that the coach? Like what is it, right? It's hard for me to honestly just sit here and not blame the quarterback. I just think that he's so quick to just run the ball. Like there are looks, there are guys that are open, right? But he doesn't stay long enough in the pocket to make a throw. There was one play towards the end of the game where he got right up the seam, but he didn't throw to him. He scrambles to the side, he ducks out, and he hit a guy for 6 or 7 yards. But it's like, you had a guy that could have had a touchdown, you know? So
right.
It's frustrating to not, you know.
And that's just it, not to cut you off. I just don't think he's playing the game at a high enough level from the pocket.
Right.
I think we thought when Bill O'Brien got hired last winter that if Castellanos was the guy, he was going to play the game at a higher level from the pocket. He did at times at the beginning of the season, but we haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, and I think what's tough, like you said, with those last 4 games, because if you win that game, you just need one of these next 4, and it's going to be a challenge. But, you know, now there's pressure to pick up 2. I don't know if that happens. I mean, North Carolina's had a really tough year, but they blew out Virginia away this weekend, for example, right? So it's just, you never know with the ACC. I just was overall disappointed. You know, you had a really big crowd there. You had a lot of people bought in. It's homecoming weekend, and you just, I don't know. It's one thing to lay an egg when you just play poorly from start to finish, but you had that game over and over and over, and they just could not put it away. So just overall, another bye week to try and get things right, but I don't know what do you get right? Like, what do you focus on at this point?
Yeah, they are what they are. And,
Yeah.
and look, it's going to be a struggle for them to find 2 wins in those last 4. Could they beat a Syracuse and a North Carolina at home? Sure. Could they go on the road and beat SMU and Dallas? Yeah. SMU's pretty good, though. And then you got Pitt, who's undefeated, coming in here on Thanksgiving weekend. So it's going to be another 6-6, 7-5 season, which is fine, I guess, for year 1 of Bill O'Brien, but the expectations were much higher, especially at the beginning of the year. I don't see too many hashtags. Bill O'Brien is building a monster out there these days. We might want to slow down on the Frankenstein talk. All right, next up, UConn hosting Rice, and they boiled the Owls 17-10. Big win for the Huskies. They improved to 5-3. They got Georgia State coming to town on Friday night to close out this historically long homestand. It wasn't pretty, but the Huskies got it done. And Ryan, when you look at their schedule, they're pretty well set up the rest of the way to possibly win 8 games and end up in a relatively decent bowl. You know what I mean? No knock on the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
Right.
But if they get to 8-4, they're going to do better than that. That would be a hell of a year by Jim Moore and this coaching staff, considering the amount of turnover they had on the roster. But nonetheless, nice win over Rice. It was a hard-fought win, something they needed.
Yeah, I think we're still kind of waiting for that Nick Evers breakout game. I mean, 9 of 24, 128 yards and a pick is kind of underwhelming. You know, like this is, you would hope against the team like Rice, who's 2-5, you'd be able to pick up, a better stat line than that. But the running game picked up again, which is exactly what they needed after that tough Wake Forest loss where they really struggled. Darrell Robinson had a great game. So I think, yeah, if you're a UConn fan, I would just be elated. Although I would hate to have these home game after home game after home game. I like a little bit of variety being spread out. I'm curious a Huskies fan's thought on that, right? To maybe have a weekend off, but right back at it again this weekend. But it's a 5. I mean, after last year, to think you took such a nosedive after a great first year, you've got to kind of be breathing a sigh of relief now. Like, oh, okay, all right, we are building something here. So that's my biggest thing for a takeaway from this.
Yeah, they won Friday night. They're bowl eligible, which is huge. It's huge for this program. And again, we can't lose sight of the fact that they're still looking for a home. They still need a conference. So if you can somehow, if Jim Moore can squeeze 8 wins out of this team, even 7-5, I don't think is bad. But if somehow they finish 8-4, and it is plausible, they got to play at Syracuse, but then you got UAB, who's bad. You got UMass. 8 wins is possible. If they win Friday night and find a way to win a couple more after that, hey, man, it's a great year for them. Like I said, they're going to get it probably into a little bit of a higher tier bowl than the Myrtle Beach Bowl. That's what this program needs. They need their profile to be raised. We know what the basketball programs are. They're national programs. The men's team has won back-to-back titles. We know what they are, and we know that they raise the profile of the entire department. But football needs to raise their own profile. I think that would certainly help. UMass, the alma mater, picking up a 35-7 win over Wagner. Not much to talk about here. I mean, you were supposed to win. You did. It was a money game for Wagner. UMass gave them their check, picked up the dub. They're on the road this week at Mississippi State. It's nice to at least get a win, even though it's against an FCS opponent.
Yeah, and I think what was good is that the running game kind of showed up in 197 total rushing yards, right? And it wasn't, Tyson Fomachan who was the leading rusher. It seems like every week he's still the guy. And I thought Brendan Campbell had a really good game, which was good. Is arriving so late into camp, maybe it's just taking him a while to get his feet wet. But I'll tell you, the first play from scrimmage when UMass wins the coin toss is a Fomachan interception. I had the game on here, and my wife happened to be walking by, and I just went, "Oh, Jesus!" And she was like, "What?" And she turned and saw the TV. She was like, "Are they going to lose?" I'm like, "No, they're good." But it's just, the most UMass way to start a game. So I was happy but I got a little nervous because the second half, Wagner was playing pretty well, and their drives were super, super long. So not much to talk about. They got the win. This is what they needed to do. It's just like Merrimack last year, right? You pick up the win, you beat them. It looks convincing, and that's what's important.
Yeah. The key there is it looks convincing. They got a tough stretch coming up, of course.
Yeah.
You got Mississippi State, you got Liberty, you got Georgia. You finish the year at home against UConn. So you still have 4 tough games left here to finish the year. you hope that you find a win somewhere in there, but it's going to be hard. I mean, those are Mississippi State is down, but you got to go on the road to Starkville. Jeff Lebby in his first year. They've been playing better of late. That's going to be a tough game to win. And then, of course, you got Liberty, who Jamie Chadwell's done a great job there. Georgia, do we really even need to debate what's going to happen there? And you got UConn, which, again, the Huskies could be playing for an 8th win in that game and a better bowl bid. So we'll see there. All right, going around college football here, D1 college football here in New England. We're going to stop in the CAA next. Richmond beats Bryan 41-14. Bryan got off to an early lead in this one. Couldn't hold it. Defense continues to struggle there for the Bulldogs. They host Stony Brook on Saturday. Of course, the game that had implications was down in Kingston, Rhode Island, where URI beats Maine 24-14 in a game that was back and forth for most of the game. URI was able to pull away. They are still in first place in the CAA. They are now 7-1 on the season. We got a big one on Saturday against a good Monmouth team led by former Maine quarterback Derek Robertson. And, you know, look, I think now we can look at this URI team and say they've arrived. Got to beat Monmouth. This is a big one because they still have to go to Delaware. They still have Albany. And, of course, you finish up the season on the road at Bryant. But they've got some tough games left in the schedule. But this is a big one on Saturday, Ryan, because if they can take care of business against a good Monmouth team, then they're going to be in pretty good shape. But beating a Maine team that is much improved, well, that was huge for them.
Yeah, it's these are the games that we talk week in week. It seems about URI, right? Like you can't get tripped up by these ones, right? And they handle their business. And it's not like, like Devin Farrell was, didn't throw out a touchdown pass, right? Only 13-24 of passing, right? But Malik
They're doing
Grant
it the old-fashioned way, man. They're running the football and
Yeah.
they're winning the line of scrimmage.
And it's just, and you have to just wonder, right? Maybe the last 2 years, like what would a Malik Grant have done for URI to kind of help push them over the edge? So I think a win like this, right, gives you that coverage now where you could maybe, if you get 8 wins, I think that should be an FCS playoff berth, hypothetically, right? I mean, I would hope so with the way they're playing and the body of work they have so far. But I'm just really happy for URI to be able to do this. And same for Maine, too, right? To play a good team like this, go down there and make it a difficult game. So, they didn't do anything particularly well. They struggled to run the ball. But yeah, just good for URI. And I'm really hoping they can kind of close this out here.
Yeah. No, I agree. And 8 wins is the magic number. I mean, they should be at the very least in contention for an at-large playoff bid, but you're very much in contention for a CAA title. I mean, it would be something else if Jim Fleming and his staff can get a CAA title out of this team in a playoff berth. I was talking to our good buddy Ian Steele from ABC6 down in Rhode Island last weekend, and I said to him, I said, honestly, Ian, I don't think this is Jim Fleming's best team. I think the last couple of years he's had better teams. Certainly 2 years ago, that was a pretty good URI team, a very skilled and talented URI team. But it just goes to show you 2 things. One, if you get the right mix in the locker room and you get guys buying in and they fit the philosophy, it's amazing what you can do. But I also think it speaks to what's going on around you. And the CAA is down this year. It's not as good as it usually is. Delaware is leaving. Richmond is leaving. So the league is going to become even more wide open and competitive, or the conference, I should say, is going to become even more wide open and competitive moving forward. But I do think that helps in this case as well, where UNH has fallen off. They're not as good. Bryant is rebuilding. Maine is better. They're more competitive, but you're a step better. I think a lot has really lined up for them. Now it's a matter of URI sealing the deal and winning this conference and getting that much desired playoff berth. Speaking of UNH, tough 14-6 loss on the road at Villanova. You hope that Seth Morgan and company can turn it around this week at Albany. But again, it's been tough sledding for the offense. Beginning of the year was fireworks galore. Seth Morgan, the receivers, they were throwing the ball all over the place. As you said last week, the running game has not been there, hasn't been there all year. They obviously missed Dylan Lobby, which we knew they would. Didn't think they would miss him this much.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden now, the passing game isn't as good. The offense is struggling. The defense has played well, but the offense just isn't doing enough.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we have to probably check in with our pal Alan Muscles up there at UNH, right? Barry Kleinpeter got the start today, so I'm wondering, with Seth Morgan, how hurt he is, right? He was, I think he went out last game, but even for the run game, right? Like Miles Thomason was back, which was excellent, but right, no Isaac Seed, right? So just too bad because you only lose by 8 points against Villanova, who's a very, very talented team, and that's got to sting even more considering your rival the week before absolutely waxed them, right? So it just got to suck thinking of where they were. You hit it on the head at the beginning of the season, and now things are just, they're kind of falling off a little bit. So a really tough one, I think, coming up, but it's at this point you're just playing not for pride, but you're trying to build something for next year, right? This was kind of the season maybe a lot of folks thought UNH were going to have coming into this year, but after such a good start, being ranked, I think it's been really disappointing.
No, I agree with you. It's been very disappointing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the Ivy League. Yale picks up a 31-10 win on Friday night at Penn. Big win for Tony Reno's squad. They're 4-2. They're quietly in the mix in the Ivy League. I mean, again, we're now in the second half of the season in the Ivy League. This is when it starts to get fun. We've got some big games coming up, of course, headlined by this Saturday's matchup of Harvard at Dartmouth. But, when you look at this Yale team at 4-2, I don't write them off. Remember, last year they made a late push and ended up winning a share of the Ivy League after beating Harvard in their rivalry game. Of course, it ended up being a three-way share between Harvard, Dartmouth, and Yale last year. The New England teams are dominating the landscape again in the Ivy League. Harvard, Dartmouth, Yale. Yale is in this. If Harvard can somehow find a way to beat Dartmouth, who's undefeated right now at 6-0, on Saturday, if Yale wins on Saturday at Columbia, they're in this thing. They've got a pretty good shot. So it should be a lot of fun. Of course, Dartmouth beats Columbia 24-21 to set up a massive game on Saturday in Hanover against Harvard. It should be a lot of fun. That's a big one.
Yeah, they took care of business. This is exactly, I feel really stupid. The last two games you just said, I picked against Dartmouth and I picked against Yale. I feel really dumb when I saw these stat lines. But I think for Dartmouth, Grayson Saunier didn't have the most outstanding game, right? They just ground and pounded. Q Jones, 182 yards. Like, this is just the way that Dartmouth's winning right now. They're absolutely rolling. That's what is just. This game is probably the best. It's probably now a top 4 game in all of New England this season coming up on Saturday between Dartmouth and Harvard.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. And, of course, Harvard coming off an impressive 45-13 win over Princeton. I mean, look, one thing I will say about Andrew Orrich's team, you want to talk about bouncing back. You lose that game against Brown week 2 in a awful fashion. And a game like that could sink a program, right? Because the stench lingers for a little while. It didn't with this football team. They came back the next week, won, took care of business against UNH, improved to 2-1, and they've been rolling since. They're getting better week in and week out. Jaden Craig, one of the top passers in FCS football. You've got McLaughlin. You've got Bascon at running back. Those two guys balance things out with Craig and Cooper Barkate. This offense is explosive. Their defense, I don't think, is getting nearly enough credit. They have been terrific, especially of late. Harvard was a preseason favorite along with Yale. They're starting to look like it now. Dartmouth has played a lot of tight games. Sammy McCorkle's team is undefeated, but they've been in a lot of tight games, Ryan. They haven't played anybody, in my opinion, and this isn't a knock on them, but other than Yale, Yale's probably the closest. I'm not sure, other than Yale, they've played anybody that's this explosive like Harvard is.
Right. Yeah. And this is what makes the Ivy League so exciting, right? Is that, you have a game that could mean something in October, but then it now is deemed irrelevant come November, or a team was having a tough start. Now it is good at this point in the year. So it really just makes this time of the year, I think, some of the best in New England college football.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're going to preview that here shortly. And, of course, Brown with a come-from-behind 23-21 win over Cornell. Christopher Marin with a game-winning field goal late in that one for the Bears. The Bears get back on track. They are now 3-3. They are going to stay at Richard Gauss Field this week. They're going to host Penn on Saturday. That's a noon kickoff. As I mentioned earlier, Yale is at Columbia. Of course, the big one, Harvard at Dartmouth as well. So all 4 New England Ivy League schools have some important games this weekend. All right, real quick, wrapping up our roundup here. Of course, Merrimack has been rolling along here. They're now 500 after their 51-17 win over Colgate. They took care of business against the Fighting Toothbrushes. Impressive win. All of a sudden, Coach Genetti's Warriors are feeling it offensively. The running game has been really good. Jermaine Corbett, the Stonehill transfer, has been fantastic, and Skyhawks miss him. He's been fantastic. But last week, Aiden Pereira in the passing game got it going. Man, this Merrimack team, they played a really tough schedule to open the season at Air Force, at UConn, Maine at home, Dartmouth at home. Those battles have paid dividends now because they're playing teams. They're battle tested, but they're playing teams that they can handle now. And I think the experience of playing against those FBS schools and those FCS, top tier FCS schools is paying dividends now.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. I mean, obviously it's been an excellent season. I mean, Seth Schweitzer had a great game. Obviously seeing Aiden Pereira do it on the ground and through the air is impressive. But it's like if they were in a conference, they'd be playing for a lot more at this point. Yeah. That's the only drawback to how well they're playing is they look excellent. And this would be a team, I think, that would be competing for an NEC title, possibly FCS playoff berth, had they had that tie-in. So, I mean, this it has to be motivating the Merrimack administration to be like, hey, this is fun, but we got to get into a conference because
they need to get into the CAA.
Yes.
That's what they need to do. If they can get into the CAA, that's the perfect conference for them. Yeah. Now, it's going to take a commitment in terms of facilities. They're going to have to put some money into Duane Stadium and their facilities. But with Richmond leaving, with Delaware leaving, you're going to have two openings there. And I'm not sure where the CAA is in regards to expansion, but Merrimack makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would be a solid fit. I mean, you have your natural rivalries with, UNH not too far up the road, especially, which is really cool. Bryant just down the road. They used to be in the NE10 together back in the day. So, yeah, I think it would be a logical fit. But like you said, they would need a massive commitment to facilities across the board. It's not like the CAA is some big extravagant piece, but when you look at a lot of those CAA football stadiums compared to Duane Stadium, it's a difference.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And I think the commitment is there because you go out and you play Air Force, you play in UConn. Those are money games. The money's coming in. You can invest in the program. Look, I know that the hockey programs in Hockey East, it's a big-time hockey program. I know that they wanted to move to the MAAC, not the real MAC. This is the fake MAC.
Yeah.
But they wanted to move into the MAAC, the Metro Athletic, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, I think.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds right. They wanted to move into that conference for basketball. So clearly they're interested in raising their profile in basketball. They already have a higher profile in Hockey East. It's time to join the CAA in football. The only thing I'll say with that, though, is, Ryan, I'm wondering if the CAA would look at them and say, we'd love to have you, but you got to be willing to play in everything here. And that could be a potential holdup. Sacred Heart beating Mercyhurst 31-14. They're on a bye this week, but Coach Nofri's Pioneers are now 4-5. Nice season. They got a big one coming up in a couple weeks for the Yankee Conference Championship against Merrimack. It's interesting that they're calling it that, but they're playing Merrimack in a championship rivalry game, so that should be fun. We'll be covering that one. But big win for the Pios. They go into their late season bye 4-5 and a chance to perhaps get to 500 before that game against Merrimack. And then finally, in the NEC, Central Connecticut State, that's a bad loss at Long Island. I was talking to one of my former players who, ironically enough, is the defensive coordinator at Wagner. And, he told me, he said, Long Island has been deceiving all year. LIU is pretty good, he said. Don't let their record fool you. They've played a tough schedule, and they've been very competitive. He said that score is not a surprise if you've watched them on tape like I have. I tend to agree with him, man. They went toe-to-toe with URI. It was 28-21 against a very good URI team. But nonetheless, this is a disappointing loss for Adam Lechtenberg's squad. You wonder if their schedule may be catching up with them finally. They played a really good schedule.
Yeah, it's just a bummer. You win this game, you're 3-1 in the CAA, which bumps you up to third. And, it's not like Brady Olson played terribly, didn't turn the ball over, but it's a shame because it felt like they were kind of turning a corner. And I'm with you, right? We saw how LIU's played a lot better, but it's just, it has to sting, right? Compared to the performances you've had, you're hanging in there with UMass, and then you go out and lose this game, and according to ESPN, whether it's accurate or not, in front of 453 people in attendance. So that makes you question everything, I bet. So
yeah, that's got to be tough. You go from playing at Central Michigan, you go from playing at UMass, you go from playing at Dartmouth, you go from playing at Yale. I mean, they played a really, really good schedule. You go from playing at those venues, not that those venues were necessarily sold out or rocking, but you're playing in front of a college football crowd. You go from that to playing in front of a JV high school football crowd. I mean, it's got to be pretty deflating. And I think unfortunately, it speaks to the state of affairs in the Northeast with college sports in general. The Northeast is not a good college sports area. UConn's an outlier in hoops. Even the bigger programs do struggle to draw if they're not competing for playoff berths or bowl games. It's disappointing to see that, but that certainly can help. Duquesne beat Stonehill 48-34 in a defense was optional game. Tough year for the Skyhawks, man. When I did my fall preview with them and I talked to Eli Gardner, they knew that there might be some growing pains because there were so many new faces. But you also, despite the fact that they were super young at receiver, young on defense, they had enough back, especially on offense, that they should be more competitive. The offense has certainly been better of late. They're starting to score points and get into a groove, but they're clearly very generous on defense, and they got to obviously turn that around. You are watching the College Football Preview Show, sponsored by Yoked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. We do want to remind you that if you are looking for a safe and effective protein product, well, Yoked is that product for you at only 47 calories per pack. It's low in calories, it's effective, and it tastes delicious. It tastes like birthday cake. Visit yoke.com today for more information. It's a great product. There's a lot of products out there when it comes to protein, adding protein to your workout routine. But Yoke is an affordable product and a safe product. That's the key. Made from real egg yolks, and it tastes like birthday cake. So pick some up today. All right, you ready to preview some games?
Absolutely.
All right, so BC is off this week. They're on a bye, so we don't have to worry about them. So we're going to start with UConn. As I mentioned, they are playing Friday night at home against Georgia State, who's coming into this game at 2-5. Of course, the Panthers beat UConn last year in Atlanta. They make the trip north this year. UConn is favored by 7.5. The over-under is 48.5. The UConn offense has sputtered of late, so that might seem like a tricky number there, Ryan. But I kind of like it here. I like UConn at that number. I think that they can win by double digits.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at minimum, it should be a 10-point game, right? I think it's the Panthers have lost 4 straight games. They're not playing well. There's not really, their biggest thing that they could put their feather in a cap to this year is they beat Vanderbilt, who's turned out to be a pretty darn good team by 4 earlier in September. After that, everything's gone downhill. Right.
And Vanderbilt beat Alabama.
Oh, that's what makes college football the best, because you care about, that's just what's special about it. So I don't know. I'm going to take UConn and those points. I agree. I really want to see more out of Nick Evers. I want to see what that NIL money that I'm sure was thrown his way to bring him here is worth, right? I want to see him start to be that guy. I want him to get to a level where UConn's worried about him leaving, right? That's whether that's good or bad for the sport. I know it's obviously bad, but that's what I want to see, the type of caliber that I think he can be. So hopefully this could be a game he can do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. They do need to get the offense going. The offense was lights out the first part of this homestand. They've really, the last 3 weeks against Temple, Wake Forest, Rice, haven't been as good. They've started to slow down. They need to find a way to continually run the football. That's their bread and butter. I don't care who they have at receiver that's come in from the portal. They've gotten a lot out of this receiving core.
Yeah.
But if you want to get even more out of this receiving core, you need to be able to run the football to lighten up that box. You need to be able to run the football to get those single high looks so that you can take advantage of matchups over the top and on the outside. So if they can get Darrell Robinson going, if they can get this running game going, I think that they'll be in pretty good shape. But it is easier said than done. They need to get Cam Edwards and those other backs going to as well. But I like UConn here. I think that number 7.5. Of course, Vegas has to be a prick about it and add that little halvesy, but it doesn't matter. I think they can win this one by 10 plus. All right, next up we have UMass, the alma mater, traveling to Mississippi State. The Bulldogs are favored in this one by 18. The over-under is 59.5. Mississippi State coming into this one is 2-6, but Jeff Lebby's squad has been playing much better of late. Lebby is in his first year, of course. Look, you look at them and say, all right, they're 2-6, but we're talking about UMass going on the road playing an SEC team. I think 18 is a fair number to take Mississippi State with. I think they win this game by 3 scores.
Yeah, I saw a lot of UMass fans kind of begroaning, really, like 18.5. I don't know. It's like, well, they've been playing a lot better. I wrote my preview today for it, and their quarterback, I believe Trevor Van Buren, has been playing a lot better. UMass played them tight in 2016, 2017, but I think what's really depressing when I think back to those 2 games is that UMass was they were in all those games, those years, and they looked good. They looked functional when it was Andrew Ford, Ross Comas, right? Like you could say they almost won. They were leading at halftime both of those games. Now I can't even fathom that, which is really frustrating to think of how far they've fallen. So obviously it's easy here. Mississippi State, I'm taking the points. I have it around a 38-17 type game. Maybe they'll keep it close a little bit at the beginning, but it's just so frustrating to think that if they were coming to this game 3-5, think of the change, and had shown something this season. Think of how much more buzz there would be. Like, hey, look at how bad Mississippi State is. Maybe we can keep hanging in this game for a little bit. But I don't think anyone thinks that right now. So.
No, I don't think so either. And look, I mean, again, it's a rebuilding year for Mississippi State, and I think Jeff Lebby's the right guy to get it going there. But you bring up a great point. Those Whipple teams offensively were pretty good.
Yeah.
And they can hang in there for a little bit, and they can play competitive. I mean, shoot, they went down and did it at Florida in the Swamp. So, but we're not looking at the same thing here. These teams are not nearly as skilled as those UMass teams. And I think that's the difference here. I am looking really quickly to see if I could find the FCS, if I could find the FCS lines on DraftKings, on the DraftKings app.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see them. So I don't think they're up yet. I'm assuming that they'll probably be up as we get closer to Saturday. So if they were up, we would have used those to pick our next games. All right, next up we have Stony Brook at Bryant. Bryant is coming into this one. I'm sorry, Stony Brook rather is coming into this one at 6-2. Bryant at 2-6. Man, Bryant has been a completely different team since that 42-35 win at Brown. They just haven't been the same. Stony Brook has had a good year, a surprising year. I don't think a lot of people thought they would be this good. I could see Bryant playing tough here, Ryan, but I think ultimately this Stony Brook team is pretty good. I think if we were to put a number on this game, it would probably be 8.5, maybe even 10.5. Either way, I think Stony Brook would cover either number. I just think they're the better program right now. That Bryant defense has really struggled. You hope that they turn it around this week and start to play better.
Yeah, it's too bad, because this is probably a game that Bryant had circled on their calendar this year, thinking, okay, we can maybe win this one, right? Looking at Stony Brook went 0-11 last year, right? 2 wins the season before that. But they've been playing pretty excellent. Beating William and Mary is not a slouch, right? Florida at the beginning of the year. I mean, blowing out Stonehill. So I'm definitely going to go with the Seawolves here. But who knows? Maybe Bryant will surprise us. I don't know. But I just – it's just been they've not, I want to say in free fall, but they haven't really been matching their kind of early season promise at times they showed. So
yeah, no. And it is disappointing because I think Chris Merritt and his staff knew that there were going to be some growing pains over 40 new faces. Merritt talked about that at CAA Media Days. But, I mean, again, I still think it's disappointing. This is a program that has taken meaningful steps. The commitment has been there by the administration. They joined the CAA. They want to be good at football. Merritt is 100% the right guy. But I do think what it says, Ryan, is the constant turnover in college football today, it takes its toll on you, man. And it's hard to win consistently when you're turning over your roster so much. And I'm not making excuses for these guys.
Oh, it's the truth. Yeah.
I think it's a thing. I think it's really hard to consistently win in college football when there's constant roster turnover. All right, next up we have Monmouth coming in at 4-4, taking on 7-1 URI. Again, we looked at DraftKings. It doesn't look like their lines are up for these games yet, unless I missed them. If I missed them and you can find them out there, if you're watching, hit us up in the chat and tell us where they are. We looked in the all sports, college football, couldn't find them. I would imagine that in this game, Monmouth is a pretty decent program. You know, this is probably not, at best, it's a 6.5-point line here. I'm not doubting this URI team. I think we're past the part of their schedule in the past where they've tripped up. I think now moving forward, this is a team that expects to win. They're in the driver's seat in the CAA. This has a potential to be a special year. I think this will be a tough game, but I think it's a game that they can win, and I think ultimately they are going to win. I like them by a score.
Yeah, I'll take them as well. I'm nervous for it just because Derek Robertson's been pretty awesome this year.
He's been lights out for Monmouth.
Yeah, he's someone that you've almost got to be wondering if you're him. Like, damn, I wish I had another year eligibility if he does, to go to an even bigger program. But a tough loss last week for Monmouth, so they might be looking to bounce back. But this being on the road, 1:00 game, I think the game's going to be packed as well. I think just there's a fever around URI football, so give me that. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, but we'll see. But I'm going to take URI to end those points.
Yeah, I like URI as well. I think that it's going to be a one-score game. I think Monmouth will play them tough. I do think that URI secondary is going to have their hands full with this Monmouth passing game. But I just think look, the Rams to me have the formula. It's an old, tried and true formula. You run the football, stop the run, play good defense. If you can do those three things and you don't make mistakes in the special teams game and your quarterback takes care of the football, makes good decisions when the opportunities present themselves in the passing game, you're going to win a lot of football games. It's exactly what URI is doing this year. They're playing these games where 1 week it's their running game and controlling the ball. The next week it's their defense. They've been able to win in all three phases. And when you can do that, you're setting yourself up for a special season. And that's what we're seeing right now with URI. All right, next up, UNH at Albany. Again, if we were to put a number on this, I'd probably say Albany's favored by 2.5, we'll say. The Wildcats need this one. I mean, at this point, you want to build momentum towards that last game of the regular season against Maine for the Bryce Cowell Musket. That game will be at home, of course, for UNH. But nonetheless, this is a big, big game for UNH. They don't want to fall under 500. They need this one. Albany's been up and down. Maine beat them up there a couple of weeks ago, but certainly they are good enough to compete with and beat this UNH team.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I don't know where Seth Morgan's at, but this is one where, I believe it was last year.
By the way, I have to cut you off. It's UNH at Maine. I said that it's at UNH, the rivalry game. It's actually
yes. Maine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll tell you, I don't know. I'm going to be a homer. And last week I wasn't a homer. I'm going to go with UNH because I believe it was it this game or the Monmouth game last year? They lost Max Brosmer for a little. Barry Kleinpeter came in, did okay. Yeah. I still think there's a lot of talent on this UNH team. Excuse me. And I don't think there's anything too impressive about Albany. Although this would be, their third straight loss, so I'm going to take UNH, but it's going to be like their Elon game a couple weeks ago and probably pretty low scoring if that's going to happen.
No, I agree. I think it will be pretty low scoring too. I like UNH as well. I think, in the end, what it comes down to it is, for me, I think that they will get it going again. They've got to look, the passing game can be very good. They've got to find a way to run the football. The defense has been outstanding this season at times, but it's about the offense and getting this passing game back on track. But just as importantly, finding a way to run the football. By the way, that Yankees-Dodgers World Series game, that last check was 5-5.
Nice.
The Dodgers are coming back. Let's go, LA.
There we go.
This is one of the few times in my life I'm going to say this, but I love LA.
I'm into it. I'm down. Play the song. I'm good. Yeah.
I got to be careful with my anti-Yankee rhetoric because we do a lot of business in Connecticut. We cover high school football down there. We got UConn. We got Yale. We got CCSU. So we got to be very careful at New England Football Journal with anti-Yankee rhetoric because there's a lot of Yankee fans down there, and we respect them. And I'll say this. I respect the Yankees. I always have, even though I'm a diehard Boston Red Sox fan and I love the Sox. I respect the Yankees, man. I respect championships. The only great franchise that I don't respect and like is the LA Lakers. I can't stand them. I'm a diehard Celtics fan. I'm not supposed to like them, but respect the Yanks. But I'm a Red Sox fan. I can't be rooting for them. So there's that. All right, next up we have Maine at Oklahoma. That's right. The Black Bears hit the road again. This time they go to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the 4-4 Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma has sucked arse in recent weeks offensively. They have been terrible. Sometimes I wonder, Ryan, what the hell is Vegas watching? You seen the line for this game, by the way? Oklahoma has been putrid on offense the last month of the season. Have you seen the line for this game?
I haven't found it. No.
It's 34.5.
Wow.
Oklahoma is favored by 34.5. That tells me two things. One, Vegas has given up on watching Oklahoma football.
Yeah.
Two, Vegas clearly doesn't watch or follow Maine football because if they did, they would know that that's a ridiculous number. Oklahoma's offense has sucked this season. Now, listen, I'm a big Jordan Stevens fan, big Maine Black Bear fan. I love all 16 D1 programs that we cover in New England. I'm a fan. I'm a supporter. Do I think Maine goes out there and wins? No. Do I think Maine can go out there and play competitive? Yes. I think if you had 24.5, I can live with that. 34.5, give me Maine. I'm going Maine as a dog here. I think that they can work with that number.
I agree. They're just still going on the
over-under, by the way, is 46. So somehow the over-under is 46, but the line is 34.5. That doesn't make sense to me.
My only thought is that they think about like the Montana State games that Maine has played, in the last couple of years where they have gotten blown out by them, who's like the best of the best in the FCS. So it's like, what do you take that times a couple, and you got OU, who's got Jackson Arnold and these guys. But yeah, obviously taking Oklahoma, but I think this is an awesome matchup. I think it's just really cool to see Maine playing in such a big game like this, right? And getting to have that program on TV and on the SEC network and is going to be awesome. So, good for Maine for the scheduled game and the paycheck. But I hope they shock the world. That would be amazing. I'm hoping big time for that.
Yes, I think they'd fire. Yep.
I think they'd fire Venables on the spot. So yeah.
Come back home with a paycheck and the win. It's always better when the FCS team gets the paycheck and gets the dub.
Oh, yeah.
And look, from a national exposure standpoint, if it's on the SEC network, it helps immensely in recruiting. I think Jordan Stevens, the University of Maine, they understand that. Football is important to them. They want to be good at football. They also recognize and they're smart about it. And people think I say stuff like this because I'm a football guy and I'm pissing all over these other sports. It's not my point. Football is the highest profile game we play at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you want to bring attention to your athletic department, football is a way to do it. Okay. It's great if you're a Northeast team and you get to go to Duke and play in front of the Cameron Crazies or play at North Carolina or play out in Kansas, whatever. That's great. But at the end of the day, a game like this, you're not going to get a high profile game like this in Hockey East. Even though Maine traditionally has been a hockey school, you're not going to get a high-profile game like this that's going to have the amount of eyes on it that this football game will. So kudos to them for seeing the value in football and how it can bring more attention to your program and your athletic department. All right, next up, we're going to go over to the Ivy League, and we've got Yale at Columbia. Again, we don't have lines for these games. DraftKings doesn't have them up there. If they did, we'd use them. But I would say Columbia's been pretty good this year. Both of these teams are 4-2. Columbia would be favored in this one, I would think, by about 2.5. But give me the Bulldogs here. I think Yale is on the come here. I think that it's going to be a sprint to the finish once again, like it is every year in the Ivy League. And I think Yale is going to be there in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely going with Yale and the points. I think that maybe Columbia is coming back down to earth a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know. But the Penn win, I think, showed me a lot last week because that's a game that is tough to win down there no matter how Penn is playing and to blow them out and win in such fashion that they did. So definitely give me the Bulldogs there.
Yeah, I'm going to go with them too. Like I said, I think they were amongst the favorites at the beginning of the season. I think that they could seal the deal here. All right, next up we have Brown hosting Penn. Penn is 2-4. Brown comes into this one 3-3 after their big come from behind win over Cornell. The Bears are favored in this one by 3.5. They had a big one over Penn 2 years ago at home. They hope to replicate that again this time around. Brown is technically still in the mix, but they need this one. If they win this one, they can still stay in the mix for a possible share of an Ivy League title. But in order to do that, they got to beat Penn again at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brown. I'm staying with the homers this weekend. I think that it was pretty. I don't think Penn has shown a lot this season, right? But if Brown loses, I think this is the perfect indication of just who they are this year. They're up and down. They'll win a game. They'll lose a game, right? But so yeah, give me Brown at home, but it's going to be close because I just they don't win a lot of big games. So
yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to go with Brown at home as well. All right, next up we have Harvard at Dartmouth. The Crimson are actually favored in this one by 3.5. Should be a lot of fun. Contrast in styles here, as we mentioned earlier. You got Harvard and their high-flying offense. Jaden Craig, Cooper Barkate, that passing game against a Dartmouth team like URI that wins the old-fashioned way. They're going to run the football with Q Jones. They're going to be opportunistic in the passing game, and they're going to play good defense. And I think you're going to see a lot of the same here. Two of the better receivers in the Ivy League here matching up with Cooper Barkate and Paxton Scott from Dartmouth. Should be a really good game. These two always play great games, always play tight games. I want to go Dartmouth. I really do, because I think Sammy McCorkle is building something special there the last 2 years. But I saw Harvard in person earlier this year at Brown. And while that was a tough luck loss, I think this Harvard team is a pretty good football team. I think the Crimson go up there and get it done in a tight one. I could see this being like their Holy Cross game, like their UNH game. I could see it being a 3 to 7 point game.
Yeah, it's harder for me to see Dartmouth still undefeated after this weekend, just in general, right? And it's the Ivy League. It's crazy, right? It doesn't feel like it should be just kind of having one smooth sailor. So give me Harvard as well. I think it's going to be a very close game. But I mean, geez, if Dartmouth wins, I mean, who's stopping them at that point, right? Because that'll be huge.
Yeah, well, right, because at that point, if they win, they're 7-0. They've beaten Yale and Harvard.
Yeah,
the preseason co-favorites. So that they would be well on their way as long as they took care of their business down the stretch. All right, in terms of FCS independence, Merrimack travels to Robert Morris. Not really going to get into gambling with this one. I like Merrimack. I think they're playing with a ton of momentum. I think Coach G has this team going in the right direction. I think they're poised to finish the year off on a streak here and finish above 500. Robert Morris is 5-3, but I like Merrimack in this one. I think they keep the good times rolling.
Yeah, I'll take them as well. I think what was so impressive last week was how Aiden Pereira was able to run the ball so much too. I didn't know that he can run that well, right? So he has.
I did. I mean, he had a 10 touchdown game in high school.
Jesus, wow.
Central Catholic played at Springfield. I believe it was 3 years ago, the fall of 2021. He had a 10 touchdown game.
Oh, yeah, wow, that's insane.
He is the real deal. Look, this is no disrespect to Maine and Merrimack, but I thought that there was a chance that he was going to have an opportunity to play either in a maybe upper echelon FCS league or maybe even a group of 5 FBS school. He has the physical tools. I mean, for Merrimack to land him in the portal after he left Maine, I think was huge for them. But I'm not surprised that he had the game he had.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then I would have. Yeah. Wow. I wouldn't have said that if I had known. Wow, that's impressive.
That is impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely give me Merrimack though.
All right. Next up, we're going to go to the NEC. We got Central Connecticut State returning home to a root field to host Wagner. Wagner coming off a 35-7 loss to UMass. Central Connecticut would be favored in this one by 3.5. But they're struggling, man. They haven't had Elijah Howard the last couple of weeks. Their offense has not been the same without him balancing things out in the running game. I'm going to go Wagner here. Wagner hung in there with UMass last week. UMass had to pull away in the second half. I think that Wagner comes into a root and hands Central Connecticut State a tough loss.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't want to pick against them, but if they had Elijah Howard, I think they'd be able to bounce back. But I just don't see that.
Yeah. And finally, Stonehill visiting St. Francis. St. Francis down this year. Of course, earlier this year, they beat Kent State. They have been the same since. They're still celebrating that win over a MAC team. They're 2-6, hosting Stonehill, who has started to score points offensively, but defensively right now, they're not stopping anybody.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against them. I mean, but, last 2 weeks, SFU has not scored 17-0, 14-0, right? And, so I almost want to just take Stonehill here just to pick up a win just for how poorly they've been playing. But I don't know if I'm that bold, so I'm going to go SFU here.
Excuse me. It snuck up on me. Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, I know they've struggled on offense. They've gotten shut out the last couple weeks, but I could see this being a really close game. But again, that Stonehill defense is having some growing pains. I would like to see them inspire some more confidence in me. But they're on the road. I'm going to go St. Francis here in a close one. All right. And finally, we have we'd be remiss if we didn't wrap up with Holy Cross, who's on a bye. So the Crusaders are on a bye. They come back next week. They're in a pretty good spot in the Patriot League. They can win the Patriot League and get an at-large playoff berth. So Dan Curran's squad has a week off. They come back next week, week 11. They'll be back in action when they host Lehigh at Fitton Field in Worcester. So Crusaders are on a bye this week, but they do come back next week for Lehigh. They wrap up the season with Lehigh at home, and then they host Bucknell at home on November 16th. And then they close out the season at Georgetown, who's 5-3. So that game could determine the Patriot League title and a playoff berth. So we shall see. All right. Any final thoughts, Mr. Barry, before we wrap it up?
No, I think we say it every week, but, rolling into, turning back the clocks, we've got, November kicking off this weekend. We've only got really 4 Saturdays left of college football. So, there's a lot of good games left. Hopefully people can get out and see it. So that's all I really care about is just, we do all this build up and then it's just over. So 1 month left and let's finish it strong.
Yep. Couldn't agree with you more. And by the way, is that a Pawtucket Red Sox t-shirt?
It is. It is. My friend who,
Awesome.
when he was living in Florida, it's actually some random bar in Clearwater, Florida that had this special, it's like a Boston themed bar and they were selling these Pawtucket shirts. So he bought me it. He was like, I feel like this is like a keepsake. So, so shout out to my buddy Mike for that. So I like this.
It is a keepsake, man. I have many great memories at McCoy Stadium watching the Paw Sox through the years. It's still pretty depressing to see that they are no longer. But we have the Woo Sox, and Worcester's a fun time. But obviously, I'm a little partial to Pawtucket and the Paw Sox. All right, Ryan, great job as always.
You as well.
Appreciate you, brother. Let's do this again next week.
Sounds good.
All right, that'll do it for the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Sarianides. We'll be back to you next week to look back on Week 10 and preview Week 11. Until then, peace is